Saturday morning in October of 1962. She set the flame to the oil lamp on her 3-panel vanity table in her apartment above the print shop on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. She was 37 years old by the time she walked through the front doors of Wheat Street Baptist Church the next morning in her white gloves and cream felt hat. She had performed 47 separate acts of beauty preparation, every one of them taught by women now dead, and almost none of them still practiced by any black woman under 50 in America. What Eula Mae did at that vanity table is now sold back to black women for hundreds of dollars a month. The modern beauty industry generates over $87 billion a year in the United States, and black women spend 9 times more on cosmetics than any other group of women in this country. They walk into Sephora on Peachtree Street, into Ulta on Ponce de Leon Avenue, into Macy's at Lenox Square, and they still cannot match what Eula Mae achieved. With 3 jars, 2 pencils, 1 cake of mascara, a single-edge razor blade, and a bottle of perfume in a cobalt blue glass jar. The kitchen beauticians who taught these rituals are buried. The Avon ladies who carried the products door to door in black neighborhoods are gone. The vanity tables themselves have been sold at estate sales for $20. What follows is the ritual in the exact order Eula Mae performed it on that October Saturday morning in 1962, before number 10. If this is the kind of story you came here for, the kind your grandmother might have whispered to you herself while she sat at her own vanity table on a Saturday morning, hit the subscribe button. A like on the video and a subscribe to the channel mean more than you know. We are a small channel honoring the stories of older black women that almost slipped through the generations. Thank you. Now back to Eula Mae. Number 10. She mixed her own face powder from 2 separate jars because no cosmetics company in 1962 made a shade that matched her skin. At 6:25 in the morning, Eula Mae opened the top drawer of her vanity and lifted out a round tin of Pond's pressed powder beside a square Avon compact in a deeper bronze her Avon lady had carried up from a Birmingham distributor. She tapped a flat puff into the Pond's, then into the Avon, then onto a small porcelain saucer she kept for blending. She swirled the 2 powders with the back of a teaspoon until the color matched the inside of her wrist. Only then did the puff touch her face. Florrie Roberts, the first cosmetics line designed for women of color, would not launch until 1965 and would not reach Bamberger's department store counter until 1967. Fashion Fair by Eunice Johnson of Ebony magazine would not arrive until 1973. The 40 Shade foundation line that finally landed on cosmetics counters in 2017 was over half a century away. The pressed compact Eula Mae blended above the print shop on Auburn Avenue is the reason her granddaughters can now find their face on the shelf at any Sephora in Atlanta. Number 9. She shaped her eyebrows with a single-edge razor blade because tweezers were considered amateur and electric face razors did not yet exist. At 6:40 in the morning, Eula Mae propped a magnifying mirror against the base of the oil lamp and reached for a paper packet of single-edge gem razor blades she kept in the second drawer of the vanity. She wet a fresh blade in a small bowl of warm water on the dresser top. With her left hand, she held her eyelid taut. With her right hand, she drew the blade in tiny strokes underneath the arch of her brow, lifting the stray hairs and never touching skin. The whole procedure took 4 minutes per eye. Her mother had taught her this in 1939 in a kitchen in Macon, Georgia, by a coal oil lamp and a hand mirror in her mother's lap. Black women in the rural South had been shaping their eyebrows this way since the 1920s, before electricity reached most of their houses. The modern eyebrow industry today is worth $1 billion a year. In the United States alone, Eula Mae spent 12 cents on a packet of 5 blades that lasted her 4 months. Number 8. She wet her mascara with clean water from a small saucer and never with the tip of her tongue, the way magazines later claimed black women did. At 7:05 in the morning, Eula Mae opened the small black box of Maybelline Cake mascara on her vanity table. The cake sat solid inside its tin pan beside the short bristle brush packaged with it. She poured a tablespoon of warm water from the kettle into a small porcelain saucer kept just for the purpose. She wet the brush in the saucer, worked it across the cake until the bristles loaded with pigment, and applied it to her lashes in 3 coats, separating each coat with a sterilized straight pin. The spit on the mascara myth was invented decades later by writers who had never sat at a black woman's vanity. Maybelline Cake mascara had been sold since 1917 and stood on the dresser of nearly every black household that could afford 10 cents a week. The modern mascara industry today generates over $7 billion a year worldwide. The cake Eula Mae used cost $1.50 at the Auburn Avenue drugstore and lasted 7 months. Number 7, she layered her lipstick in 4 steps because no shade designed for black women's lips existed on any drugstore shelf in 1962. At 7:20 in the morning, Eula Mae walked to her bedroom dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a folded handkerchief that held 4 objects: a brown grease pencil from the corner store on Edgewood Avenue, a tube of Avon Velvet lipstick in garnet rose, the only Avon shade close to red on her skin, a square of tissue paper torn from a Sears catalog page, a second tube of Avon in the same shade, sealed and untouched, kept in reserve for Sunday emergency. She lined her lips first with the brown grease pencil, drawing the shape full and 1/4 inch beyond her natural lip line. She filled in with the garnet rose. She blotted on the tissue paper. She applied a second coat. The procedure took 11 minutes and gave her a depth of pigment no single product could deliver. Fashion Fair lipstick with shades formulated for the full range of black skin tones by Eunice Johnson was still 11 years away from the cosmetic counter where Eula Mae would finally retire her grease pencil. These were not 4 separate tricks. These were the 4 opening movements of a single liturgy, and Eula Mae was only 45 minutes into a ritual that would last another 3 hours and 15 minutes. The Avon lady would not knock on her door again until Wednesday. The Maybelline cake would dry out by Easter. The cobalt blue perfume bottle on the lower shelf of the vanity had not yet been touched. What follows is what she did at the vanity table between 7:30 and 10 o'clock that Saturday morning. And the most important step in the entire ritual has not yet happened. Number 6, she cleared her face with Pond's cold cream before applying any new makeup, the same brand of jar her mother had set on her own vanity in 1934. At 7:30 in the morning, Eula Mae lifted the lid off a jar of Pond's cold cream that had sat on her vanity for 11 months. She scooped a fingertip of the white cream and worked it across her forehead, her cheekbones, the bridge of her nose, and the soft skin under her jaw. She wiped it off with a cotton ball soaked in witch hazel from a clear glass bottle on the dresser. She did this so the pressed powder she had blended in step 10 would sit smooth and last from breakfast until the closing benediction at Wheat Street Baptist. 28 hours later, Pond's cold cream was first sold in 1907 and stood on the vanity of nearly every black middle-class woman from 1925 to 1975. The modern skincare industry today generates $140 billion a year worldwide. The jar Eula Mae used that morning cost her 40 cents at the Auburn Avenue drugstore and lasted 13 months. Number 5, she put on her clip-on pearl earrings from a velvet box that had been opened by 3 generations of women in her family. At 8:05 in the morning, Eula Mae pulled out the lower drawer of her vanity and lifted out a small dark green velvet box with a brass clasp. The box had been pressed against her mother Mabel's hand in 1934 in a making parlor and against her grandmother Hattie's hand in 1908 in a sharecropper's kitchen in Talladega County, Alabama. Inside rested a single pair of cream white clip-on pearl earrings, slightly yellowed at the post, sitting on cotton wadding her great-grandmother had cut from a flour sack and trimmed with embroidery thread. She clipped the first earring to her left lobe, the second to her right, and turned her head 3 times in the vanity mirror to confirm both sat flat against her jaw. The earrings would stay on through Saturday errands on Auburn Avenue, through Sunday morning service at Wheat Street Baptist, and through the dinner table that followed. They had been clipped to 4 women's ears across 87 years, and they would clip to her own daughter's ears in 1974. Number 4, she steamed her white gloves over a tea kettle and pressed them under the family Bible until the cotton stood up like fresh paper. At 8:35 in the morning, Eula Mae carried her white cotton church gloves into the kitchen of her Auburn Avenue apartment. She set a copper kettle to boil on the gas range. She had washed the gloves by hand on Friday night in ivory soap flakes and laid them flat to dry overnight on a tea towel. When the kettle whistled, she held each glove 3 inches above the spout, turning her hand in a slow rotation so the steam softened every wrinkle. She carried the warm, damp gloves back to her vanity, laid them flat on a clean linen square, and pressed her family Bible on top. The Bible was the King James edition her grandmother had bought from a traveling preacher in 1907 for $2.15, and it weighed 4 pounds. The gloves sat under it for 45 minutes. When she lifted the Bible at 9:20, the cotton was crisp enough to stand on its own. White gloves in Black church culture were not optional. By 9:20 on that Saturday morning, Eula Mae had completed what beauty industry executives today call surface preparation: foundation, lashes, brow, lips, cream, earrings, gloves. The scent, the hat, the brooch, and the final sit down at the mirror were still ahead. The most important act in the entire ritual was the last one, and it had nothing to do with any product on the vanity table. It was the act her grandmother had performed in a sharecropper's kitchen in Talladega County in 1899, and it has now disappeared from Black households almost entirely. Number 3, she placed her perfume at 4 warm points on her body and on the inside hem of her slip, never on the wrist alone the way the fashion magazines told her to. At 9:25 in the morning, Eula Mae reached for the cobalt blue glass bottle of bourgeois evening in Paris perfume that sat on the right side of her 3-panel mirror. The bottle was a gift from her husband for their 7th anniversary, bought at Rich's department store on Broad Street in Atlanta in 1959. She tilted the bottle against her left index finger and pressed the wet fingertip against the soft skin behind her left ear. She repeated the gesture on her right ear and on the inside of each elbow. She lifted the hem of her cotton slip and pressed a 5th drop into the seam just below her right hip. Evening in Paris in the cobalt blue bottle was first sold in 1929 and stood on the vanity of nearly every Black middle-class woman from 1935 through the late 1960s. The fragrance industry today is worth over $50 billion a year worldwide. The half-ounce bottle Eula Mae touched that morning was barely a third empty after 3 years. Number 2, she pinned her great-aunt's mother-of-pearl brooch to her church hat as the final act that completed her Sunday crown. At 9:40 in the morning, Eula Mae lifted her Sunday hat from the wooden hat stand by her bedroom door. The hat was a wide-brimmed cream felt with a navy grosgrain ribbon, purchased from the millinery counter at Davison's department store on Peachtree Street in 1961 for $11.40. She laid it crown up on the vanity beside the 3-panel mirror. From the second drawer, she lifted a small mother-of-pearl brooch shaped like a magnolia blossom inherited from her great-aunt Ophelia in Birmingham. With a long brass hat pin, she fastened the brooch to the grosgrain ribbon 2 inches to the left of the center crown. The Sunday hat in Black church culture was not an accessory. It was called a crown, and the woman wearing one was a queen to her congregation. The width of the brim, the height of the trim, the price tag, the choice of brooch, each announced her place in her community before she said a word. In a segregated South that gave Black women few public stages with full dignity, Sunday morning at Wheat Street Baptist was one of them. A church hat in 1962 told more about a Black woman than a year of social media poems. Number 1. She sat down at the 3-panel vanity mirror at 9:45 and performed the act that has now vanished from Black beauty culture completely. At 9:45, with the hat back on its stand, the gloves crisp on the linen square, the brooch pinned to the ribbon, the perfume settled, the pearl earrings clipped, the lips painted, the lashes built up, the brows shaped, and the powder blended. Eula Mae Robinson sat down on the upholstered stool in front of her 3-panel vanity mirror in her apartment on Auburn Avenue. She did not look at herself in the center panel. She turned the left panel inward at a slight angle until she could see her own profile. And in that profile, she saw her mother, Mabel Robinson, who had died of pneumonia in Macon in 1957. She turned the right panel inward at the same angle, and in that profile, she saw her grandmother, Hattie Cole, who had died of old age in Talladega County in 1944. For 4 minutes, by the brass clock on the vanity, Eula Mae sat between the 2 women she had come from, and she said nothing. The 3-panel mirror sit down was not vanity. It was the act of asking permission to walk out the door as the woman they had made her. No Black woman under 50 performs this sit down anymore. No cosmetics company sells it. No magazine ever wrote it down. The most important 4 minutes of her Saturday morning cost her nothing. At 10 o'clock, Eula Mae Robinson stood up from the vanity stool, turned the 3 panels of the mirror flat against the wall, blew out the oil lamp, and walked into her bedroom to put on her good dress. She placed her cream felt hat in its round white hat box. She slid her hands into the pressed white gloves and pulled them past her wrists. She walked down the wooden stairs of the print shop building, stepped onto the sidewalk in front of Yates and Milton drugstore, and walked west along Auburn Avenue. Every woman who passed her that morning, walking to Saturday Market on Decatur Street, walking to the beauty parlor at Auburn and Hilliard, walking to the funeral home on Auburn Avenue, saw the magnolia brooch pinned to the left of her crown. They caught the trace of evening in Paris in the air, a step behind her. They knew exactly who she was. Did your grandmother ever sit you down at her vanity table on a Saturday morning and show you the order of the ritual? Tell us in the comments below. We read every single story you share. And to everyone still watching at the end of this video, thank you from the bottom of our heart. This channel exists because of viewers like you who remember and care enough to listen. If you have not yet hit like or subscribed, both would mean the world to us.